So I've got back up the calendar release for some games coming out.
Yep.
And obviously Final Fantasy, the new, what are they calling this one? Rebirth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's coming
When's
out
that coming
next
out?
week. The week that this will release.
Oh,
We're going to
nice.
have
Yeah.
FF7 Rebirth out. So I was curious if you were going to be picking that up.
I don't have a PlayStation, so no.
Oh, shit.
I'll wait until it comes out on PC.
I might have to be the early vanguard on that one then. Check it out.
Your unbiased Final Fantasy VII opinions.
I can be unbiased about it. It's just I wouldn't have chosen that one to be the big, like, hey, we're redoing it. I would have chosen 8 because I'm biased.
You're a weird dude.
I know. I'm okay with it. I've made peace with that. No, honestly, the one I'm most excited about is the remaster of Dark Forces, the Star Wars shooter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They've
Very
gotten,
excited.
They seem to be kind of figuring out how to remaster that era of games better. Like those Tomb Raiders, from what I can tell, I haven't played it, but I've just been watching streamers and stuff play it. It seems to be most people's problem is that the new controls don't work very well, and if you're especially if you're someone who's used to the old school tank controls,
Yeah.
they're not as they don't work quite as well. But that's
Makes
not my
sense,
opinion.
because the level design was for tank controls, not modern. So it's going to feel clunky. It would have to, unless they like take extra liberties to, remodel the level design, and then it's not really like a remaster. It's just a full redo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I'm still holding off on picking up Skull and Bones. The reviews have not been good. I don't know if you've looked.
I looked enough to know, like, I saw that it wasn't like trash fire bad. They were just like, it's not very good, which was kind of disappointing. Like I said, I was really hoping for some Duke Nukem Forever style garbage, but
Yeah, it's just more of like a not really worth your time, but not worth getting into why either.
yeah, not to jump too far ahead to what we're talking about, but like, how much money did Ubisoft spend on the development of this game over the course
Jesus.
of how much?
I mean, let's actually look, because it was what, 12-year project?
11, 12 years, something like
Yeah.
that, versus like, all of the Enshrouded, Pal World, Helldivers 2s of the last few months,
Yep. So let's see. Just a quick glimpse. Looks like it was around $200 million to make that.
$200 million
Yep.
to make.
Yep.
What's the source on that?
This is China. No, it's not China. Channel News Asia. Like I said, it's just a quick. I'm still looking. I'm looking for a better.
Okay.
They are selling it for
could
70.
be.
I mean, it
It
could
wouldn't
be. All
surprise
right,
me.
let's go to their wiki here. See what's going on. I'd like to see the cost. I mean, some of this might just have to be speculation. They might not be
Yeah, I
sharing
don't know.
all of that info.
They would. I doubt that, especially now at this point, they wouldn't necessarily want to let all that stuff out. I wouldn't expect to be able to find it, frankly. But yeah, I mean, I assume it would cost a lot of money. I mean, even if they didn't necessarily have a dedicated team, but just had people working on it, and I bet that they spent a lot of money on servers that no one's using, as opposed to.
Let me see. Someone sat down with the CEO and had a conversation with them.
Oh dear.
So it's him defending the $70 price point, saying that this is one of the first quadruple A games, and as such deserves that price point. So, $200 million might actually be right.
I mean, that's like
if
Marvel
we're
movie
trying to just
costs.
tack A's on based on cost alone.
Yeah.
I would believe it purely just for keeping like lights on operating costs, that it could actually be 200 million. Not that the game itself, the development of it would have taken that long, but since it took so long. Let's see. A lot of it was done by the Ubisoft Singapore team, it looks like, so maybe that site actually had more insight into the cost, right? Let me see what their site material is for the cost here. This Channel News Asia, because I've never been to them before. Which reportedly cost 200 million, but they're not linking to where that source is.
It's Singapore Public Broadcasting, looks like.
Okay.
So
Let me
as much
see.
and probably as reliable as any other major news outlet, I would assume.
Yeah. I just would like to see
So
someone who like cites their source, because
yeah, no, absolutely.
thegamer.com is also saying a reported 200 million. This one's saying here from 2023 that it has a budget of over 120 million, according to a former project manager on the project.
Yeah. that
Kotaku
checks
also
out.
reported that last year. So let's just say somewhere between 120 million to 200 million. Still too much.
Yeah, that's insane.
Way too much money. Holy shit. Now let's look at Enshrouded. I mean, it's still ongoing, but
I mean, maybe something like Pal World. I mean, the thing is, like, Shroud, I guess, is still early access, but like, I don't know. Helldivers. What's the dev cost of Helldivers?
probably not much. 8-year period, it costs between 50 to 100 million. That's the estimated development cost. It's not hard. They have not
what's the
publicly
source on
disclosed
that?
that. Reddit.
Oh, okay. So that could be.
It could be anything. I mean,
Yeah.
if it was an 8-year period, it could have been that much. Again, just for purely operating cost.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they're a smaller studio though, but they're in Stockholm. That's going to be pricier than anywhere else in that area.
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, it is pretty wild though. So I had the metrics open on Helldivers just for that alone. Right now, while we're talking, they have, let me refresh it. Yeah, it's gone up another 7,000 players concurrent. They're at 222,588 players. So just in the last like 15 minutes since I opened this, it's gone up another 7,000 players on.
So Helldivers 2 has sold 4 million copies. 4 million times 40.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
You got this. 160. 160.
is
160.
wait, no, I did this wrong. Divided by
God
44.
damn it.
That's they would need to sell 100,000 copies to break even. No, I did this wrong again.
You did it very
Jesus.
wrong.
Fuck. Okay, no one listened to this. So let's say they did cost 100 million.
They've made 60 then. 60 million off it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You did the math. Okay.
Yes.
So
I've had a couple coffees. I've been up since like 7.
I've been up. It's 4 p.m. This is
this is
brain time.
No, it's not. That's when your brain's starting to slowly shut down for the day. You're in your afternoon lull. You need to get your 5-hour energy out. Yeah, it's pretty crazy though. Like, check this out. I'm gonna send you.
I mean, Pal World sold like 14 million, right?
Oh yeah.
So this is most played games on Steam right now. By current. Counter-Strike 2.
Yeah.
Dota. I'm surprised PUBG is still in the top 5.
I think it's
that would
purely
have-
just because of its all-time peak. Like, that's why it's there.
This says current.
Oh wow, its
Looking
current
at-
is there too. Yeah, but look, Counter-Strike's got double that, and it's number 3.
Yeah.
I guess
still,
it
but
depends on
I
how
mean,
you got it sorted.
No, but I'm sorting by number of current users.
Oh, I've got it sorted by all-time peak. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're gonna look at it in a little bit of a different order.
Yeah, but okay, if you sort by all-time peak, then it's not even. Then none of these games are even in the top 10, really.
No,
If you
not in
go
the top
by-
10, but that's still like it's what, number 22, I think, 23 is
Yeah.
Helldivers, and it just came out. Like, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I think unfortunately a big part of their problem is their lack of server support, right?
Yep, they weren't expecting this much demand, so they're scrambling for more, which
Yeah.
I don't know why that can't just be like a flick of a switch for cloud services, but maybe that's
Wow.
not the way they're built.
I don't. Yeah, I think that's something people pay a lot of money and pay a lot of people to figure out.
Sure.
No, my thought being that like with these kind of big multiplayer games, I do wonder how much of a diminishing returns you get after they initially come out. Like, I feel like, I mean, as much as Helldivers 2 is a success story and Pal World's a success story, I do wonder like how much we're talking about them in 3-6 months.
I'm curious too. I suspect Helldivers 2 we'll be still talking about. Pal World we won't be. Because Pal World isn't done yet. Enshrouded, Pal World, they're not done. And if their development cycle isn't going to have like a roadmap that has new content being released at least once a month, they're not going to keep people's attention for it. The Forest was really good at that. I don't know if we've talked about that on here before, but they would do a countdown, and it was like every 2 weeks there'd be a new patch coming in. And so as soon as you were on the title screen, you'd see this big yellow countdown timer of when the next patch was coming with a link to what features were going to be on that. So you actually got excited to check back in, even if you weren't actively playing. Helldivers 2, though, it's built. Like they're now playing out their campaign. The way they've described it, they've got some people on site who are game masters, who are actually like seeing how the players are playing, and they're kind of guiding the narrative story for the attacks of the different factions that are coming for Super Earth. They've also just got a really good community for it. A lot of activity on the subreddit. Been very fun following along, even if I don't hop on for a day. I haven't played it in a couple days just because the last time I tried, I couldn't get on.
Right, yeah. I remember those. I mean, not that I've done that with Helldivers, but I remember, Warcraft or World of Warcraft in the early days having that problem, and
yeah,
it felt all the more special when I could finally log in and then go to Ironforge and have my computer crash because it couldn't handle loading everything in Ironforge.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we should talk about the game we played, which was pretty good. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's a different High Seas game than Skull and Bones.
Yeah, a much better game set on a ship in the water.
Yeah.
What has sails? But first, welcome to the Save State. This is a podcast in which we talk about video games that we played,
and also
other crap.
Yes.
In which we play. In which a pod we play. It's a game cast.
You nailed it. You got it, bud. How you doing?
But we played Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yes, we did.
Which was a game that I have been intending to play probably since it came out, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
This game, I can't believe it's been this long, and it's been sitting there in my to-play bin for this whole time. Yeah, no, this was a good game. It's nice to play really nice. Sometimes.
I was watching just a real quick interview with Lucas Pope, mainly covering like his struggles with localization of it.
Oh yeah,
and it almost just didn't work out for it to happen. But I didn't know he was involved in Papers, Please.
Oh yeah, that was his big breakout game. I mean, when I knew of Obra Dinn first as the guy who made Papers, Please is making a new game. But yeah, you mentioned the localization problems, and I mean, first of all, what we should say is this is a mystery game. Deductive mystery.
Mystery, I think, is more accurate.
Yeah,
sure.
There's murders, and you use deductive reasoning to solve what did the murders. And a lot of what your information is given to you is just audio chunks of like 10, 20, 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why localization would be difficult, not just for translating it, but because so much of figuring out who's who, because you like to start the premise, you are an insurance adjuster who's set aboard an empty ship that has floated into the harbor, and you have to figure out what happened so that the insurance can be claimed and all this stuff. This is a ship it's set like, I want to say like 1800, like Napoleonic times, maybe 1820, somewhere in there.
Now, did you have to install a little pad under your desk just now to hide the sound of your erection thudding up against it when you said that? Because this does seem like this exact type of game for you.
I mean,
the most exciting premise of a game.
Yeah, I mean, it did. They also made the point of like the graphics are like this kind of retro styled, simplified monochrome colors and stuff like that, meant to emulate old like 80s CRT monitors, and the options were given a selection of old CRTs to pick from, to emulate as the style.
Yep.
Why this is a thing that you include in your Regency or a murder mystery thing, or I don't know, or early Victorian. But it is another thing I like about it.
If you've ever seen like a photograph, if you've ever even seen a photograph from that time, it kind of fits with it because like the photos from back then, especially now looking back at them, and they've degraded some. It
like the
looks a
sepia
lot, or even hand-drawn photographs of people of the time, right? Like a profile.
Yeah, there's a lot of
person. It's similar in art style.
Yeah, the art style somehow manages to kind of emulate that woodcut etching you'd get in like early newspapers and stuff. But to go back to my original thing, which I digressed from, the reason why I think this would be difficult to localize is because a lot of what you're doing is listening to audio, because you just have corpses. You can't identify anyone. You're just trying to identify who these corpses are for the most of the part. And you have to use bits of dialogue that you hear to deduce who these people are. And a lot of that comes down to language and accent and stuff.
Yeah.
So I can see how difficult that would be in other languages, where you have to find like what's the equivalent of hearing a Scottish accent versus an Irish accent versus an American accent, like that, which is in the game part of figuring out who these people are. But yeah, I don't know how that works. And I mean, if you look at in the credits, I let the credits roll just to see what would happen, and half of the credits are localization credits.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's going to be an insane undertaking. I guess it's possible. Like, go find a Scotsman who speaks Mandarin. Like, that's how it's going to sound, I guess, if you want to release it in that area.
Do most Mandarin speakers know that?
Probably not.
You know
that's fair. I could see it being almost necessary to have the internet alongside you as a companion, not to find the answers out, but to kind of confirm suspicions about different, especially the roles, right? There's a lot of, not just in language and mannerism, but there's clues within just the way people are dressed.
Yeah.
It's such a complicated game, like for looking so simple. When we first started this, I went in so blind that I didn't know it was a 3D game. I had only seen the images, and I thought this was going to be a 2D game where you're kind of flipping through scenes, kind of doing a Where's Waldo clue hunt.
Right.
So the moment I even started walking around, I was blown away. Yeah, I don't know how this works in other regions. This is a very complex game that requires you to make guesses.
Yeah, it's a lot of like initially simple kind of deductions that just build and build and build, because you have 60 people on this ship that you all need to determine the fates of, and it gets more and more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
To speak of the moving around thing, I will say that that is like the one kind of complaint I have about this game. Is not so much that I was kind of worried I was going to get a little like motion sick from the art style and the 3D, but that wasn't really a problem at all for me. But what I did kind of have some problems with was like just getting stuck on stuff. Like there'd be a thing hanging and I couldn't walk around it or walk on, because there's no crouch or jump, which I'm not saying this is a game that needs a crouch or jump feature, but like it does kind of help you when you have to deal with maneuvering around a 3D environment. And like in reality, I can, like if I have to get around a thing, I can turn sideways.
Yeah.
Or I can kind of duck my head down under something. And in this, like there were some points in this game where I was just really frustrated. I'm like, why can't I get around this thing? And it's because I had it was just weird 3D wonkiness.
There's also a mechanic. So the way your adjuster goes through and interacts with the bodies is this timepiece that they use to go back to that moment of death or a moment related to it, depending on whose body they're interacting with. And that's what helps you kind of piece together not only their identities, but their cause of death. My issue with those sequences was that sometimes I got the information pretty quick, and yet, like the scene had already played out, I'd gotten the information, but there's often going to be, especially if you've already been in the scene, a door that you can just, it's very obviously like a mystical portal door you can walk through and back to the normal setting. And then you can go investigate on your own beyond that. But if it was a new time going through, you were just stuck there until a certain amount of time had passed, and then it would move to the next sequence, the next thread for a follow-up. And I wish there'd been some kind of button that you could have pressed during that time to skip to the next part. So, because there was a lot of times where I'm just sitting there waiting, and that I found frustrating. And I know it's just to give you more time to look for clues, but they could have done away with that whole thing altogether and just had you hit a button when you're ready to move on.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I there was a couple times where it's just like, oh, okay, and because the other thing is like you hear the event happen, and then you see like a tableau, like it's they are 3D models posed, but it's still, so you can look around, but there's not like. It doesn't move. There's no animation in this game at all, really, except for the character. You're the player character. So you end up just kind of standing there. Like sometimes it felt like it was inconsistent how long I had to sit there before I could exit sometimes. Felt like maybe they were making these ones longer to try and hint at, like, oh, you need to go see what's going on in the other room while this murder is happening or whatever. But that didn't seem to really be the case. A lot of the time I just ended up sitting there staring until like the iris in happened so I could leave. Yep. But like one thing I will say about these like go back in time sequences is that you every time you go to the body, you hit your switch, you hit your watch, you get the audio from the event, which you can skip at least, but it keeps playing. It keeps playing as you move around. The music changes to the mystery music, and then you're put in like the past space. And sometimes, especially later in the game when I was just kind of filling in the blanks, I was going back multiple times to look through some of them, and that change got really annoying. Just having to hear the audio bit, the audio cue, the soundtrack change. The soundtrack's very good, a little bit repetitive, but like it was just like, okay, I get it. Can I not have it do this time? Like it would have been nice, because the other thing is, like, in order to hear the audio messages, you have to actually activate the body. Whereas all the other information, well, not all a lot of the other information can be just, it's in your like journal you're writing as you solve these mysteries, and you can go back and see, okay, who was in this scene, where was this, what order did this occur, but you don't get the audio cue there. You can see the transcript or the dialogue, but sometimes you have audio with no dialogue, in which case nothing is there. So you still have to go find the body and replay the scene over again. And sometimes I was just like kind of trying to hear, like, is there a hint of an accent there, or did that person like whisper something, or it was that was a little frustrating. But that could have, like, I would have preferred if I could have just replayed the audio file from the journal, even if that isn't particularly like immersive, I guess, because it's not like there was a tape recorder or anything. But
yeah, it would have been nice. I know, but we're already past the realm of reality, right? Like mysticism is ever more heavy in this game. The more you play into it, which is actually interesting because of the way the story plays out. You're working backwards most of the time through it, which you would think would spoil things for you, but the way the story plays, it doesn't. You are going to spend at least the first half of the game being utterly confused and overwhelmed by the amount of corpses and story threads that make no sense together. And I thought I was playing it wrong and was a dum-dum until like I just kind of kept brute forcing not my way through solving, because the way the game's mechanic works is once you get 3 guesses correct as far as who the person is and how they died, then it will lock those in, which both meant that you can kind of cross those people off and like, okay, let's move on to more story elements. But also, if you were hard on one, like if one was really difficult to solve, you could take some of the easy ones and then kind of make some guesses to lock in that third one. Which I only found myself doing a couple times. It was more that the story was so abstract for so long. I couldn't figure out what the tension was, or if it was just one point of tension, or if it was multiple. It's multiple. There's a lot going on in this. And it doesn't really hit its groove until about the halfway point, for me at least. After the initial like awe of the game, faded, I struggled to kind of stay involved in it for a while because I was just becoming frustrated with like, I don't know, that's another fucking dead body. Like, who the fuck knows? Yeah. I got to guess on how they died. Don't know who they are.
Yeah, no, my thought was less like I wasn't as meticulous about it. It's like my thought was like, okay, I'm just gonna get all the broad strokes and I'll come back in and fill out the things. So I was just like, okay, here's a body, and if there was any like definitive information where someone's like, says a name or something like that, then I'd write it down. But other than that, I was just kind of like going just to kind of pencil out the timeline and everything, like the events, and then going back and figuring out the specifics, which I think worked pretty well. My one thing, so like this, the tone of this is very much what I would call like proto Lovecraftian, like basically Edgar Allan Poe, but some of those other kind of like early horror type things. Like I think the which is actually like a true story thing, but like the Mary Celeste was like this ghost ship that rolled up into like an old town, and no one was. It was a big deal in like 1830, 1840, or whatever. So there's also an Edgar Allan Poe story, and I can't remember what it's about, but it's a guy who stows away on a whaling ship, and there ends up being like cannibalism and all this kind of other stuff. And anyway, I was expecting like this I don't want to say monster reveal, but like the twist reveal to have occurred later in the story,
right?
And it happens very soon, and you're just like, oh, this is what we're dealing with. It's this kind of story. And I kind of wish they had saved, like, Jaws. You don't see the Jaws until like an hour and a half into the movie. Same thing with Alien. Like, you don't see that Alien until an hour and a half into the movie. I kind of wished that I didn't see the monster until later in the game.
Well, and that's funny because while it was visually impressive, I don't know if the Jaws of this one was necessarily, for me, the one that you're talking about either. There's a lot of supernatural elements to this.
There's more than one, but I mean, like, once you see one, you kind of understand the direction that things are going,
I hear you. I was not expecting, Yeah. I'm making hand signs to my co-host so that
maybe we'll do a spoiler in a bit. We'll do like a bit of a spoiler chunk so we can talk about those things.
Yeah,
but
that one was more the like, ooh, this is fun, this is new kind of surprise for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting design. I thought that was like a take on the thing. Actually, why don't we just talk about it? So, do you have a lot of other like basic stuff to talk about before we get into like the spoiler stuff?
I mean, not too much. The mechanics of it are so simple that there's only so much you can talk about without getting into the meat of it, the story itself.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. Like, it's a deductive reasoning puzzle, and like, unlike a lot of games where I think spoiling the narrative isn't that maybe that big of a deal, I feel like with this, because I think you could really kind of ruin the game for yourself if. So if you don't want to, Arvid will interject in a second and tell you where to jump to if you don't want spoilers.
Oh, fancy.
And he will do so now. The 43-minute mark. You are now entering the spoiler zone. So yeah, this deals with a lot of supernatural mystery stuff. Like I mentioned Edgar Allan Poe, and there's definitely some Lovecraft in there. There's a sequence at the end which kind of I thought was an interesting little bit, because like you basically solve all the mystery, and then they it says like finish you solve everything but these two people's fates, and then the guy gives you like the little chapter you're missing to tell you what happened in that bit. And when you do, it's accompanied by like a monkey's paw, which, because you need like a bit of flesh to use the time rewind device, so you could see the death of this monkey which allowed you to see what was going on in this place you couldn't get to while you were on the ship. But it definitely felt like a fake out for like, oh, look, it's a monkey's paw. You don't know any stories called about a monkey's paw, do you?
Nothing trepidatious here.
Yeah. So like I don't know how much that added personally, because so like long story short, the main, like not long story short, but the main story of this for those who are uninterested in playing the game or already know it, ship leaves harbor carrying Formosan nobility. Formosa being Taiwan, an old time name for Taiwan.
Yeah.
Which I did
under like a different ruling period. I also had to, because I was like, so did they just create a fantasy country like and everything else is grounded in realism? And my dumbass, nope, they didn't. That was a real place for a bit.
I heard Formosa before in my brain, but I thought it was like one of those like old timey terms for some other place like Ceylon or Arabe or
Sure.
So like anyway, but they have these magical like these magical artifacts with them that they're just carrying. Some of the crew decide to kidnap the Formosan royalty and jump ship, and their idea is to like ransom them and sell this stuff. Mm-hmm. But in so doing, the magical artifact activates summoning mermaids, which are like ghoulishly terrifying mermaids. They're not like Disney mermaids. Yeah, well, they have.
No, they got titties. They're mermaids, but
I mean, they have teats. I don't even know if I would like they look.
Is that not the technical term?
Yeah. No, I just meant like they're not they're not designed to look attractive. They look like.
If you've ever seen like a like accurate
pig
depiction of a hag, is what I was going to say, or like a harpy. Like a harpy would be, I think, very accurate in not so much the wings, but like in this very elderly, ghoulish deformation of what kind of could be a person.
I don't even know if I would say elderly. I think they're just supposed to be fish-faced. Like I think they're just like, what if it wasn't half beautiful lady, half fish? What if it was like, 50-50 mixed the other way?
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Fair. I meant more elderly for the skin sag, but yeah.
Again, I don't know if it was even. I don't even know that you could tell. Again, because of the like. Also, like the other thing about the graphics is that like it's not just like wireframe 80s like overlay. It's also like PlayStation 1 style like actual models. Mm-hmm. So they're just like textures overlaid over simple polygonal models. So it's really hard to kind of get a good look at what you're looking at.
I tried.
Yeah. So anyway, they come back. Some of them manage to come back with these mermaids because they somehow managed to kidnap them using the magic artifact. Yep. And then this incites a series of events as the captured mermaids use their magic powers to summon first spider crab cavalry, which pretty terrifying.
Yes.
Looking for that unit in Warhammer Total War. Thank you, please.
Yeah, that I could see Chaos Demons deploying some of those.
Oh no, that'd be a Vampire Coast unit.
Sure.
And then the crew mutinies, and then there's a Kraken, and then then the reveal is the story itself isn't much because like if you put it all in a timeline, it's pretty cookie cutter what you'd expect out of a horror story, but because you're figuring it out piecemeal, backwards, inverted, it seems much more mysterious, which I guess is good because like if it wasn't that simple, this game would be very difficult. Like I think by having like a linear, but anyway, what I was expecting was something more like, the crew is killing each other. No one really knows why everyone's mutinying. It's like this, maybe there's some weird cannibalism. No one trusts each other. Kind of mutiny on the bounty type stuff. And then like later on you'd find out that there was some sort of magical thing going on. But it's like your fifth fate you fought, you see the giant Kraken, and I was like, okay, this is kind of a big reveal
early on.
I would have liked
like incredibly
exactly.
early. Yeah.
I would have liked to see this later.
Yeah, I mean we're already in spoiler territory, so it's kind of when we were talking yesterday, I was like, well, I thought I knew how Abigail met her fate, and I started to guess early, and then I was like, let me just wait a little bit longer. And it was like the next sequence when I hopped back on was the big reveal of the Kraken coming through, right? And that's not even what got her. It was just that donk from the rigging. But
yeah, that's the other thing about this. Like there's 60 people, of which 56 die on this ship, and like some of them just die and just really like everyone talk like a lot of crewmen mutiny because they talk about things being cursed. I'm like, this was cursed before the mermaids. Like you have people who there's a stowaway who dies because the barrel he stows away in just falls in the ground
because also, they weren't calculating his weight into the ropes for hauling that shit, so they snapped, which killed another person.
The guy underneath, yeah, exactly. And then another guy gets killed by getting hit in the face by one of the mermaid tails. Not even it would have been a slapstick moment and anything else, but no, that broke his neck somehow.
Yep.
And then another one dies because the stretcher they've used to hold him up, it slips and it's
another one dies because another crewmate is trying to take a shot at one of the mer people, misses, goes through the wall and hits him where he was hiding.
Yeah. It's just it's comedic really in a lot of
senses.
Yeah. I mean there's also the one guy who's literally pooping when he dies.
Yeah.
You just have to listen to a guy poop for 20 seconds.
Yep.
That was a little I don't know.
It's the way life goes, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Sometimes you die on the shitter.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's my thing is that I wanted there to be more suspense in this. I never felt like there were they're only the big the reveal of the spider crab cavalry was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it never elevated beyond that for me, and I would have liked to I mean, I know it's not necessarily that video games need to follow movie or play story structure and you have a climax 80% of the way through the story, but I did kind of feel like all the really cool shit happened early on, and then later on I was just kind of dealing with oh, did first seaman this stab fourth mate what's it on the poop deck? Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was the third mate. I don't know.
Better check the scarf they're wearing if they have one on, because that's going to help identify it.
Is that a Welsh accent or an Irish accent? It was just, I didn't, I would have liked, that stuff should have been at the beginning.
Yes.
And then, it should have built towards that other stuff is what I meant. I wouldn't have mind, I said, if I was kind of expecting it story-wise to be oh, there was a mutiny, and then there was this, and this was that, and then, oh no, Buck Wild shit happened. But really, it was Buck Wild shit happened, and then also there was a mutiny, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
But that's splitting hairs. I guess we can exit the spoiler zone now, unless you have something else.
I mean, the only thing, I don't even know if it'd be a spoiler, but the Formosans, oddly enough, were the hardest ones for me to identify for a while there, purely because of I gendered names. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what gender those names are. Instinctually, I do more, European structure to a name. So making those guesses for a bit, I was just wildly guessing until a couple more sequences happened that outright someone's name was called, and I was okay, at least I have one. Holy shit.
Yeah exactly. No, and the other thing was there are there are 4 Chinese sailors and there are 4 Indian Muslim sailors.
Yes,
I'm assuming that.
And what do they call them, the Lasik or something?
Yeah, I don't remember what they said, but they never, only one of them ever calls any of the other ones by name. Mm-hmm. And they don't speak English, and they don't. So there was they all had the same rank. There was no real way for me to tell them apart. Even some it wasn't with the other ones they would have accents, right? So I could tell the English guy from the American guy from the Irish guy.
Yeah. But
there was nothing that they all just said India or China, and I don't speak Indian or Chinese, and there was no one ever said anyone else's name. So I had to just brute force guess those ones, and I felt guilty. What am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting something wrong? But no, I was just like, okay, well, we'll put this guy here, this guy here, this guy here, because I know this is one of the Chinese guys, this is one of the Indian guys. Like, I know that that's what they are,
Yep.
like, but from their dress and the language they're speaking. And I was just cycling them in. There was no way for me to say that this is the names that we were given, you know. So, like, that was kind of, I mean, like, I get why you do that, but it felt weird that, like, I was brute forcing, like, the faceless foreigners as opposed to, like, you know, just I couldn't tell Timothy Dim from Bimothy Pim, you know.
Yeah.
Like it was.
Which, I mean, I did have some of that issue. There were a lot of, I mean, not Seamus, but like a lot of Seamus-like people where I was just like, I don't know. It's another kind of like British, or maybe he's like Northern British or Scottish guy with a beard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Is this the gunner? Is this the gunner's mate? Like,
Well, neither of those were British.
no, they weren't.
So. But no, those are the ones that are easy. Like that guy's got a Polish accent. Okay, we got that one down.
Ah, yes.
So
they had some clues like that I think if I was a little more familiar with different regional dialects, like sometimes I thought like there was a Swedish guy, or maybe he was Finnish or something. I think he was Swedish, right? And
there's a Swedish guy and a Danish guy.
Okay, and that's the one that confused me because they'd use like words, but to me, might as well be the same thing. Like,
yeah, well, yeah, the Swedish guy spoke some Swedish, but the Danish guy never spoke Danish, I don't think.
I know someone used like a
you'll-
German word too.
Yeah,
But,
there was the gunner was Austrian.
Yeah, Austrian, right. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff you're right. For localization, I'd be really curious how you would do that, because it would spoil it if, like, when the Formosans speak simplified Chinese or Mandarin or whatever they are speaking pops up on the screen, and then
Well, I think they're using like a Taiwanese dialect. Because I
That would
remember
make
him
more
saying
sense.
that he had a specific Taiwanese like localization guy helping him before. I mean, not localization, but he had someone who was consulting on the language before he finished the game in English.
which makes sense for those sequences. They work for us, but you couldn't quite do that for, like, if you were in, you know, India playing this game, having English text up top isn't going to be as helpful because there's so many different regional dialects for it. I don't know what you could
India
do.
is a bad example because so many people in India speak English and are exposed to English language
Yeah,
stuff.
but that doesn't
But
matter.
in general, I agree with
They're not
you.
going to still necessarily know the accent.
Well, no, like I didn't know the difference between Chinese and a Taiwanese accent
Right.
at all. But like, that's actually, I guess, something that would be easier in some localizations. Like if you did speak Chinese, you'd be like, "They're not speaking the same Chinese I speak." So you could probably pick that up in the same way I can tell the difference between the Scottish speaking guy and the English speaking
That's fair.
guy. Although there were a couple instances where you can kind of tell they were leaning into like the Scottish person. Like you could almost expected them to like whip out a bagpipe or something.
Yeah, I kept waiting to hear "donkey"
Yeah.
come out of someone's mouth there.
Okay, so that's the end of the spoiler zone. But yeah, I really like this game. All in all, the tone is really fun. I guess the thing is, like, maybe this is because this is actually 6 years old now, but I feel like I've played a lot of games that do this since then. That maybe I don't know if I liked better, but like the deduction part felt a little more intuitive. Like, I think Her Story is something I saw compared to this, and I kind of thought that maybe that did a better job with some of the stuff. Like, so much of the mystery solving is like they have to put all these layers of gauze in front of your face to. This game could be boiled down to one of those charts where you say, okay, Joe doesn't like bread, but Jim does like bread, so I can use that to deduce that, like you did in school or whatever. So like there's like all these layers of stuff obstructing that. Like you don't actually see what goes down, you just see the stills. You don't hear who's saying what because there's no animation. You just have the audio played beforehand. You can't see any of the sequences in line. You have to like see them all mixed up. The graphics obfuscate like things by being simplified and monochrome. Like it's really a very simple game, that uses a lot of obfuscation to complicate things. And at first that was fun, but I kind of I don't know. I would have liked there to be more. Like there was just some, and also like the fact that there were some puzzles that didn't have like an answer. Like they were just, you have to guess these until we say it's right.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that.
Yeah. Kind of forced brute force. It did kind of break from what should have been a really smooth, logical thought train. Mm-hmm. And those moments derailed that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could have been a little better on that, especially coming from the person behind Papers, Please. I'm surprised that they couldn't have found some ways to put in some more details to, even if they were incredibly well hidden and obscure, to clue players that were ultra savvy into, identities or causes of death, without you having to just guess.
Yeah, I would have liked that. I mean, like the other thing is like, I felt like it felt like I lost in a way toward the end, where like I knew I had to brute force these. I've seen everything. Like I played this for hours. Like I know that there was no way to differentiate. Like I watched every scene that all of the Indian sailors were in, and there was like only one part that lets you differentiate that anyone says anyone's name. So I just had to, like for the other three, I just had to guess. Like. There was nothing that humanized them other than the fact that they just had cultural costume, It was a weird thing. I mean, it almost works, I guess, because like if you were an insurance adjuster in 1810, would you be like, you'd probably be like, oh, look at those Chinamen or whatever, like you wouldn't like try and humanize the individual like that. But to me, like having it be that I was blind guessing and it came to a point where I was blind guessing on the people who were specifically not Europeans. Bugged me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But also, I mean, that could be like a bit of an indictment against the times as well, right? Like they wouldn't.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, they wouldn't have gone into as much detail about trying to identify them as individuals. They're just work hands.
Yeah, and you can kind of see how they did that in the manifest. Like they all have these kind of like, they have like they're not like at least with the Indian workers, who I assume are Indian Muslims, have like they have like a what I would associate as a pretty typical Islamic Muslim name, like Akbar or whatever, and then before that they had like a Western name, so they were like Abraham Akbar. And I don't think that, and then like they had like another one that was like, I don't know, like Robert something. Like they were trying to kind of give them Western names that people would use, but it really felt like they were kind of basing it off of this other name that they had, which maybe that was something they did. Maybe that's very accurate to the time period, but it also meant that it also just felt like I had even less to go on because I didn't even have they seemingly didn't have last names,
Yeah, it's interesting. I was trying to look up and see if that term had like a historical meaning to it, because everything to this seems fairly historically accurate outside of the mysticism. Because I'd be curious if part of that was just the nature of them being like a almost like a mercenary crewman, not mercenary in like a combat role, but like a just a crewman for hire. Like, oh yeah, we've got this guild. How many guys do you need? And here they are. Like,
yeah.
And then whenever you've got a ship on your end that like works back this way, they're going to be on that crew too, like to come back to like the chapter house or whatever.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
Right.
Now that was actually another question I had. Like, so this is a East Indiaman ship. Like it's for trading from Britain to the East Indies. And it's part of the East India Company. It has a whole gun deck that is with like several cannon. Is that something that would be accurate to have at this time with a merchant ship?
I mean, maybe. I guess it depends on, because you're either going to need an escort, like a gunship, right?
Yeah.
Coming along with it.
Maybe.
Which
I don't know.
It just depends on what you're trying to trade with. I mean, any trade is going to be valuable, and if you've got the resources to protect it, why not?
Right. Well, yeah, but I mean, like you lose a lot of space in a ship, which is very valuable, especially at this time period. I mean, like my understanding of this is mostly like from the Napoleonic, like Horatio Hornblower stories and stuff I've read.
Sure.
And like piracy by this point was not as. This isn't like the Pirates of the Caribbean times. This is well past that, judging by the dress and the hats and stuff like that.
So looking at a couple of the ships that were notable during the East India Trading Company's run between 1800 and about 1850, they did have cannons. They did have a gun deck on their ships.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, they were it looks like about a 3.5 deck ship. So they might have just had a lot deeper of a cargo hold than we were thinking.
Yeah, I mean, this has got 3 decks. I was just surprised they bothered to waste space on gun decks. I don't know.
I guess they'd rather get their cargo there safe than not at all, right? Is the argument. Like, even if they just have to spend more to make more ships, I don't know.
Yeah, no. I was just surprised when I got down there, and I was like, I thought this was a trading ship, not a warship.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, they didn't have any, they did have, a gunner and a gunner's mate, so...
Well, and who knows? Maybe some of the East India trading ships at the time were just retrofitted older naval ships that had survived, right?
Well, then you'd think they'd have more guns.
True.
I don't know. But anyway, it was interesting. I that's the other thing is talking about the historicity of this. I kept feeling like there were bits that I was missing because I wasn't looking stuff up on Wikipedia. I felt like there's a lot of dress code and hats and stuff, and I was thinking so I did a lot of Googling, thinking I'll be able to deduce what rank they are by their hat and stuff like that. And aside from the captain, there wasn't really a codified hat uniform apparently back then.
No, so. There was definitely one person who was very called out by their clothing for being a Frenchman, but that was...
I don't know, actually.
You didn't... Because I was I'm pretty sure that's the French person, so I selected it, and it ended up being right later on. I guessed that way too soon. The game came up, and it was you don't have the information for this one. I was I think I do.
Yeah, really? No, I thought... I didn't, actually, because I thought that, to me, it reminded me of those Russian Navy shirts that he was wearing, as opposed to the French. I guess they're both blue and white striped shirts. Yeah. But I guess that's a bit of a spoiler.
That is a bit of a spoiler. Oops.
That's 1/60th of the mystery solved for you. Sorry about that.
We gave you a leg up. Actually, it looks like a lot of these were retrofitted from merchant vessels into naval gunships. A lot of the East Indies ships, when they were done with them, they'd sell off to the Royal Navy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and do some news.
News.
And we're back.
And we are back. Before we get into news, I just got a little bit of a gripe.
Okay.
So I just finally got around to getting my PS5. Namely because you couldn't find them for forever.
Yeah.
Already hearing rumors of a PS5 Pro very soon coming to market, and that possibly 2026 timeline for the next iteration of the PlayStation console for new gen. Gotta say, I'm very disappointed in that. I was hoping that Xbox, Microsoft, Spencer, whoever you want to identify it as, saying that our games are going to be multi-platform, not exclusive going forward, kind of was the death knell to the console wars, and I was looking forward to that.
Well, I don't think the next generation of the PlayStation necessarily another phase of the console war. I think they have to keep up with PCs, and PCs are kind of running the game right now,
outpacing.
As we have been talking about everything right now, Helldivers 2 exploded because of PC users. Like, it was a game that was published via Sony, I believe, with the idea of releasing simultaneously on PlayStation and PC. And for every one player you have playing it on PlayStation, you have 8 people playing it on PC. Yep. And also you're seeing PlayStation more and more. They're launching their games simultaneously on their own consoles as they are on PC, and obviously Xbox has impetus to do that because Microsoft.
Yep.
So I think at some point we'll just see consoles that are just little TV computers.
Streaming decks. They're all just going to become streaming decks.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's actually something it's interesting to mention because I try to set up Steam Remote Play on my laptop. I'm trying to play stuff on my couch, so I have Remote Play stuff on my laptop, which is plugged to my TV, and it's got a bit of a lag. Like, I've been playing mostly turn-based RPGs with it. Like, I don't know that I would try and play like a Souls-like or something with it. But if we get to the point where, like, I mean, maybe we're at that point now, and I just have shitty Wi-Fi, which is very possible, where I can just do that. I'm never gonna buy a console again. You know, if it ever gets to that point where that has a decent response time, there is no point of me ever buying a console. Mm-hmm. You know, I was thinking about that because I'm like, I was thinking about getting a Steam Deck, and I was like, well, do I need a Steam Deck? Because I mean, I guess I could use it on the plane or something. So, I don't know. At this point, it seems like all I need is my computer and all of the very expensive hardware that goes into it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just hoping that I don't really care if PC wins or if a console, like if PlayStation won and just becomes the dominant mode of gaming. I just want crossplay to stay and I want it to grow.
Oh, I don't think that's going anywhere.
No, I know, which makes me like feel comforted. So I don't have a dog in this fight as long as crossplay is involved.
At least. I mean, crossplay between Xbox and PlayStation, I don't know. But, I mean, I just think right now you're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't have crossplay with PC.
Yep.
Especially because that's such a large, much. And the other thing is, like, since, like, the Super Nintendo, every console generation's thing is always, like, we need to make games that use this hardware to the best of its abilities. So, like, it wasn't that they were always, like, straining the console they were based off, but you were making games with the idea that this needed to run on this console. Even now, we're making games that run on like the last console. Like so many of the games that like Pal World, I don't know if it's out for the PlayStation 4, but I'm sure the PlayStation 4 could run it.
Oh yeah,
you know? Like
it's not that impressive of a game.
Yeah, like it's not. It's like everything needs to be like you can jack it up, with your 3080 RTX monster or whatever, but you also or 40 whatever.
No, I have a 3080.
But like you also have to be able to tune it down for all the people playing on slower computers. And that also means that you have to have stuff that can run on your Switch, but can also run on your PlayStation 5. There isn't like this necessity to always be used making things for that console specifically.
Yeah, well, and to that point, Helldivers is a great example of that. Like, as successful as it's been, AMD players are suffering on it. Enshrouded, same issue. Runs great on NVIDIA graphics cards. AMD, it fucking crashes all the time for them. So, yeah, that is the complication to PC over console, is you're trading a standardized hardware setup and architecture that is not going to change to literally could be anything.
Yeah, and well, that's one thing. It's like basically the PlayStation and the Xbox are just little computers right now. Like the actual hardware and stuff that's going on inside. The only thing that's actually still its own console essentially is the Switch. And you can kind of see how that benefits Nintendo in the sense that there is stuff that will launch on multiple different platforms that will run like crap on the Switch, but there's stuff that they'll make for the Switch that only Nintendo knows how to get the most out of the Switch.
Yep.
So like it still encourages you to kind of like even though you're like, oh, the Switch is very underpowered, you're still seeing Nintendo make really pretty things because they know how to get power out of it.
Yep.
So like I can kind of see some benefit to going all in on your hardware, but like trying to play it all ways like like PlayStation is doing, and to a lesser extent Xbox, I don't know how feasible it is in the long run.
Yeah, I think the slow and steady of Nintendo might end up winning out on that one as far as consoles go, because they don't care about being up to date with their hardware.
Yeah, I mean Nintendo is a Nintendo machine that you put Nintendo games on.
Yes.
And then also all the other weird things that are on the Nintendo store.
The adult stuff. We've actually gotten a request to occasionally try out one of those more verboten games on the Steam list.
Christ.
So we might be doing an Orc Massage review here at some point.
Oh, I'm not.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. No, me neither. But speaking of Nintendo, though, I guess we should news. So before we get into what we were going to talk about, I did see that Switch 2. A lot of rumors have been coming about the Switch 2 lately. Nintendo has confirmed to their game developers that the Switch 2 is going to be pushed back to at least 2025. And news of that has caused their stock to plunge 8.8%, as far as Bloomberg's reporting yesterday. So I'm not worried about that, though. Like, Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo's going to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think they need to lean more into, like, their strengths. And I think what they need to do is they need to curate their store better.
Yes.
And because like that's always the thing with Nintendo since the NES was like, if you buy a Master System or a Genesis or you know, if I buy a PlayStation, there's going to be a lot of weird third-party crap out there. And like if I buy a Nintendo, I know that even if Gam goes to, you know, EB Games and gets the thing that the guy tells him to buy behind the counter, it's going to be a decent game, even if it's, you know, not at all what the kid wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it loses that, like there's still that, like I still know that if I buy a Nintendo game for my Switch, it's going to be a pretty decent game. But at the same time, I also would never let my nephew go on the Switch store at all because it's just buck wild in there.
Yeah, and very little way to hide that.
And you just never know if stuff's going to run well.
Yeah.
You know, like we talked about the Dragon Ball game we played. Like you had it crashing on you constantly.
Yep.
I tried to buy XCOM. I did buy XCOM 2 for the Switch a while back.
Oof.
I was thinking, you know, it's a turn-based tactical thing. Like I imagine there'll be some graphics compromises and stuff like that. But like they didn't do a very good job of it. It was constantly shuddering and loading in really slowly. Like I wouldn't mind if you turned the graphics all the way down,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just it performed really poorly.
That game is a bit of a different beast, though. Even my old computer, which could run most modern games, okay. XCOM 2 would just crash it like all the time.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but I just mean like it's not just that like I'm worried about like the stuff on the Nintendo store being like risque or gory or whatever. It's that like you never know if it's actually going to be any good, if it's going to run properly, and that never used to be a problem with Nintendo games before. You never were worried like if I get a Dreamcast game, is it going to run poorly on my Dreamcast? That was never something you were worried about.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the DICE Awards winners here in just a moment,
yes.
But some fun things have been happening on Helldivers 2 that I just want to spotlight as both the developers are, you know, interacting with the community and the community is interacting back. It just goes to show you that, like, a small indie team, like, if they can really plug in with the gamers, you can build some great stuff. So here's a little quick 30-second video I'm sending you. If you want to just give that a little watch, just to see, this is some breaking news on the automatons' counterattack, pushing closer into the sectors of Super Earth.
Oh, okay. So it's like in-game, like news stuff. I like that. It's very Starship Troopers.
It's very Starship Troopers. And then as we were talking, one of our buddies posted to a gaming chat group I'm in with him and some others about the Helldivers community. So there's this planet called Malevolent Creek that we've been trying to defend and push the automatons, which kind of look like T-1000s in their most basic form, and then get more and more complicated from there and start becoming more like Warhammer 40K mech units. This planet, people in the community have kind of decided is going to be like our Civil War Flashpoint. And they've really began to adopt this personality to it. So here's a poem that got put on the chat that I just find very intriguing, that this is how much this game has captivated players.
Helldivers 2 poetry.
Yes.
Okay.
Blood and oil mix with soil while those back home still sleep. Crimson light in the dead of night makes all our deaths feel cheap. Sweet liberty, listen to me. Let me sow so I may reap. What time we've lost here in the fog of old Malevolent Creek. Armor's broken, my bones too, but I know I'll last the week. When your rifle's dry and the moon is high, remember you weren't meek. Now full of holes, I won't grow old, and my blood begins to leak. And water's the ground where I'll be found, here at Malevolent Creek. Democracy, you've offered me the strength to not be beat. And though I can't but wonder why, at least I'll get some sleep. So do not mourn, do not cry. I ask you, do not weep. My job is done, the day is won. There are no old divers at Malevolent Creek.
Interesting. It does sound very familiar.
Oh, I'm sure it's pulled off of like someone just swapped some words from an old war poem. But the fact that the community has become this invested in the game, it's something beautiful that only happens once in a blue moon.
In 3 weeks.
In
basically.
3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's impressive. That's like some.
So the devs have already announced that they're going to begin taking communities' projects, those videos that are getting made, the poetry, and they're going to take the best of it and actually incorporate it into the canon and lore of the game going forward.
Okay.
Very fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like to hear these
love to see an underdog rise up there. Okay. So, DICE Awards 2024.
Yeah. So this is what the 4th award show we're covering on this podcast.
It is.
Like how many video game awards do we need? Like
probably just one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will say, going through this, the DICE Awards seem to be the least like whack of the awards.
They actually seem the most reasonable. Like the first thing I checked, of course, was the independent games, and yeah, they're all made by an independent studio. Not that this isn't like some of them are big studios that have made hits before. You've got the team that made Limbo and all of those taking the win with Cocoon, but all of the independent game studios that got nominated all are truly independent. There's no Dave the Diver on it.
I feel like we've blown. Dave the Diver is in.
I know.
Like I feel like and for all intents and purposes, it is an indie game. It wasn't like none of the other game said independent studio game by an independent studio.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was an indie game, which again, I think Dave the Diver is an indie game.
Yes,
but I get the point though.
Yeah,
one should have a category for bringing attention to independent games.
I think so. You know, I'm surprised though that so they don't have it just straight up game of the year on here. Mm-hmm. It's more like what category of game. Well, they do. It's Baldur's Gate 3 is game of the year, but
Kill Surprise.
That doesn't even count, does it? Like, can we actually count that? Baldur's Gate 3 was such a phenomenal hit that it was going to sweep up all of those awards. So yeah. I prefer more that they've got game of the year for your category of game. I don't agree with all of them, but I haven't played every single one. Like, I haven't played all these sports games, so I can't say if MLB The Show 23 really was the best of, 3 games? That's it? That's all it was, is that? WWE 2K23, which I have played and I did enjoy, and EA Sports FC 24, which
the problem is like sports game. I mean, there's like 3 monopolies for all the sports, and they make the same game every year. So like, I don't even know why you just pick which one's the least boring. Which roster update you find more interesting that year?
I'd like to see more like Blood Bowl or one of those up there. Like, let's get another weird like orcs playing football thing going on.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But I don't know. I digress, because the racing games didn't even count as sports games. They're their own category of racing games, which, fine. Maybe this is a conversation for another time. Is like how we categorize.
But I mean that is a good point. Like, a Formula 1 game could be a sports game, could be a racing game. F-Zero, not a sports game, but a racing game.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
that's fair. I was surprised to see the adventure game of the year be Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
was a good game.
It was a great game. I don't know if it falls into the adventure category as much as it does like an RPG, at least an ARPG.
I think the genres, I mean, this is what we always end up talking about when we talk about awards, but like, what the heck's an action game? What's an adventure game? What's an action-adventure game? If someone says, I'm playing an adventure game, I'm thinking like Grim Fandango.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of...
Disco Elysium could be an adventure game.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But I'm not thinking of Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Nope.
That's an action game.
Yep.
Even if I would just assume basically any game that is more where you move a person around and you hit people with a stick or shoot people with a gun is an action game. And if the primary point is something other than that, like solving a puzzle or talking to people, then it is not an action game.
Correct.
That is like the only thing I can think of. So Dave the Diver's in the action game category, not the indie game category.
Mm-hmm. Which I think that's a fair place for it to be. That makes sense. The primary mode of progressing within the game is by attacking things with weapons to harvest them so you can go back and sell them.
Yeah,
there's a lot more action to it than adventure.
But it's not an action game. It's an adventure game.
But it's not. It's not.
No. I mean, anyway, the categories are weird, and these are always weird. I don't know if anyone's ever going to like do all that stuff.
Yeah. I think Baldur's Gate 3 deserved this win for Outstanding Achievement in Story. I think that's fair. I would have liked to have seen Alan Wake 2. I mean, it was nominated, but I think that could have won that as well. But
this year reminds me a lot of 2007, where you had No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood and Zodiac all came out the same year. Like, I don't know any of these things. Like, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, Game of the Year, great. Tears of the Kingdom, Game of the Year. Alan Wake 2, yeah. I could even see, like, Diablo 4 won online Game of the Year. Marvel Spider-Man 2 also could have been Game of the Year.
It was very fun. Visually impressive.
And it's even Jedi Survivor, I could see some years giving that Game of the Year.
Yeah, I think
maybe
Count
not
Kestis is one of my favorite new Jedis to be introduced into lore. Very enjoyable.
Post-Disney, you mean? Post-Disney?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I would agree. Like, I think he's fine. I think he does a good job reacting to his environment.
I'm very anxious for the live action version of that actor portraying that role, because that's coming. That's gonna happen.
I mean, you say that, but they still haven't made like a freaking like Mara Jade still isn't in anything.
I'm hoping that this Dr. Dark Forces remaster is going to change that, though. Bring Mara Jade back into the forefront of people's minds. But they have to be careful with how they introduce Mara Jade, since like Luke Skywalker went and became a hermit. Doesn't mean that she couldn't have been around during those periods.
I mean, we had an entire TV show of all the things that Obi-Wan was doing while he was a hermit. So
That's true. That's true.
Hermitage is a relative thing in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm waiting for the prequel where we find out that, Yoda ran a casino on, like, Nar Shaddaa for a few years.
I'd watch
while
the
he was
shit
in
out
her.
of that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, the other thing about the Dice Awards is that, like, all of these just check out. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, I don't find any. There's no, like, weird things like Red Dead Redemption 2 getting, like, Labor of Love awards or anything like that.
I am happy to see going through the categories one more time to make sure I'm right in that assertion, but I'm really happy to see that there's no, like, live service achievement award. Like,
Well, there's an online game award, which I think is probably where they put the live service games. Because, I mean, that's where you got your Diablo, your Call of Duty, the finals.
Yeah, which, God, what even is that? It feels like the TikTok of games.
It disappeared.
Like, I feel so old even trying to wrap
I don't
my
even
head
think,
around
like,
that.
if I were to, I would say Apex feels like the TikTok of
sure.
games, and, like, the finals is, like, I don't know, Kick.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, I mean, that's also something I heard. I felt like when it came out, I was hearing a ton of stuff about, and I haven't heard anything in months about that. But yeah, so I was gonna make a quiz based on the Dice Awards,
But then you look through them.
Yeah, they're not really that. There's no fun, jokey quiz things I could make out of it. Although I do have some, like, I guess I can just give you some, like, there is one game that has the same name. That is to say, it's not a remake, but it's sequel that has the same name as the first game in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them are tied for third for most nominations for an award at 12. Can you guess what that game is?
Baldur.
This is to say, they're both called blank, exactly the same name. They both have 12 nominations in the Dice Awards in different years. And, one is obviously a sequel to the other.
Including this year.
Including this year. But they're not necessarily from this year.
It's got to be a sports game then. I guess it's going to be MLB The Show, just of different years.
It's actually God of War.
Oh, shit.
God of War
How?
2006 was nominated for 12 awards, and God of War 2019 was nominated for 12 awards.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
Yeah, in fact, God of War is the most awarded franchise in the DICE Awards game history.
Very interesting.
With 26 wins over 6 games.
Holy shit.
For reference, Mario is the second with 23 wins over 23 games. So Mario only averages 1 award per game, whereas God of War is far beyond that.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting. I basically dismissed the God of War franchise until the reboot, the 2019 one came out. Apparently, people also liked the previous ones.
I tried playing the older ones, and they were fine. They just seemed like any other action game at the time to me.
Yeah, to me, they kind of just seemed like Devil May Cry, but for people who hate anime. Like, it's like,
yeah,
it's Devil May Cry, but instead of being like a wispy, willowy Asian guy it's like a big, strong white guy with shaved head who drinks energy drinks and drives a truck,
Yep.
But that's obviously God of War has gone into many different directions since then.
And I like the current direction it's gone into. With its storytelling's a lot, but I still haven't finished Ragnarok. But I've been very much enjoying it, which is a sign that I like it since I haven't finished it.
No, yeah, me too. So one last question on this little mini quiz.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you any multiple choice answers, but can you tell me what the most nominated developer on this would probably be? Or actually, tell me the first one and then tell me the second one. So most awards won by developers won the most awards in the history of the DICE Awards, which goes back to 1998, I think.
Oof. Then I'd want to say probably going to be like your Konami's or Square Enix.
Konami's not
let me
on
go
there
Square
at all.
Enix then.
Square Enix is no. It's in the top 10, but they're like
okay. Gut instinct wanted me to say even like Sega or Nintendo as being their own developer and publisher, but I don't know if that feels right either.
Nintendo is the right answer for the number one because I mean their internal development teams.
Sure.
What do you think is the number one after that, or number two after?
Also
Nintendo?
known as number 2. Yes.
Yes. The number one after number one.
Yes. 1 and 1. 2. Interesting. I don't know who that would be then. I'm trying to go through my old teen brain of, I guess, Rare? Maybe Rare?
No, it's Naughty Dog.
Oh shit, really? That makes sense,
Creators
I guess.
of I mean, you forget, like, I always forget that they made Last of Us, and they made Uncharted, and they made Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, so that's, like, a lot of potential. There's a lot of good games in there,
yeah.
So no surprise, I guess.
Huh. Well, there we go.
So, yeah.
Learned a little something today.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, of the, like, that is one thing I learned about going through all this, is that if I were to have to look at an award show for figuring out what games is good, I would probably go by the DICE Awards, because they seem to be fairly on line of what I would have thought of was the better ones of all the games given in the nominations and such.
I think that's fair. You know, it's funny, I was, when I went through to check the independent game category for accuracy, I started looking at the games for it, and they actually all look like games we might want to cover on here. Cocoon, obviously, I've heard only great things about, so that's an easy one. Dredge, you and I already have on the list to play, but Thirsty Suitors, I don't know if you looked into this, but it looks
I've
super fun.
seen it before. Yeah, it's it's like the art style looks very interesting.
Yes, it does. Looks a lot like a Jet Set Radio, kind of, for some of that gameplay.
But with like more fluid and
Yep.
That could be interesting.
So I think we got some games even from this that we could check out.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the DICE Award Game of the Year award winner from actually, was it Game of the Year award? Obra Dinn won a DICE award when it came out.
Makes sense.
But that was 6 years ago.
God,
right?
It's wild that it's been that long.
Obra Dinn. No, sorry, only 5 years ago. No, 6 years. Well, it depends.
Right.
It's the end of 2018. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But
I mean, that's like, if you look, like, this is awards for games that came out in 2023, even though it's the 2024. And gripe I have on that was the family game of the year, if I can find it. They had Disney Illusion Island on there as a family game, and not Disney Dreamlight Valley, which
Dreamlight Valley.
But that seems more like a family game, right? Like, it's a fun family game to play. If you're going to throw a Disney game on there, I don't know. I don't know. Personally, I think that would have been the smarter choice.
I think Dreamlight Valley shot itself in the foot by being an early access game.
Sure.
And it's like, is that a 23 game? Is that a 22 game?
Sure.
I mean, because it technically didn't actually come out until last year, but it's been around for a while. So
yeah,
I think it kind of lost some of its relevancy as it went through early access.
That's fair.
But yeah, look for us to do an episode on Cocoon in 2030.
Yes, we'll get to it eventually. We've got a lot of games to get through. A couple years worth on that list.
Yeah, speaking of which, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I've been playing a couple things this week. So obviously I've been playing Helldivers when it lets me on the servers. But I also checked out the demo for the upcoming Star Trucker. I've never played a trucking simulator game, and I know you have. This was really fun. I don't know how similar it is to like American Trucker or any of those, but I really enjoyed
American Truck Simulator. American Trucker's a different thing.
I apologize.
No, I mean, that is actually a problem I have with the whole trucking genre, or most of these sim genres, where it's like, no, don't play Farming Simulator. You want to play Farm Simulator, or like, you know, like, like they all have the same. No one wants to just call it something else.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's fine. So it's really fun. I enjoyed the casualness of it. The scenery was really pretty. I liked like the highways being set up in space with billboards around, and the way you hit an interstate is you hit a jump gate that fast travels you to the end of the jump gate through it, and then you're having these fun dialogue options on your CB radio with other Star Truckers in the area. You're stopping at these like space outpost diners along the way, where you can also pick up contracts for hauling. It's just a really enjoyable game. One of the first things they have you do in it is you're leaking lung fluid, which is the trucker speak for your O2 canister for your space truck is leaking. So you have to go get a spacesuit on, get into your airlock.
Or something.
Yeah. Shoot up top, go find the leaks. The whole time you're in full zero gravity, so you can pivot around and spin and kind of. I could see you actually, like, if you're not being careful, like losing your way back to the ship if you hit the wrong thing and like bounced too far away from it. But then you have to get some plates on it and patch those holes up. And I'm really interested to see what the full game can do, because it looks like it's more than just like a casual driving simulator. It's got a few more things that might happen in it without it being a full-blown action game.
Action, you say?
I don't think there's going to be action in that sense. This might be more of an adventure game. But that was really fun. And then I checked out just real quick. I haven't gotten too deep into it because, frankly, it's very difficult. But Deep Rock Galactic put out a Vampire Survivors like called Deep Rock Galactic: Survivor. And it's fun. I'm waiting to see. Like, I still haven't unlocked any of the other characters. As far as I can tell, there's just like 4 characters, so that's a little disappointing.
It's an early access.
It is an early access, though. Yeah. So that's going to be something I'll just come and check out every once in a while. It's like half a gig, so I'm not too concerned about the, the size. I'll just leave it on my library for a while, and when it has an update, I'll go back and check it out. But yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I have been playing. I've been playing more of the Apollo Justice game on my Switch when my dog allows me to.
Mm-hmm.
That's been fun. Mostly, I've been confined to my Switch this week, and that's still good. Not much I have to say more about that.
Yeah,
and but I did like have an like I've watched some like speed running stuff on YouTube lately as I want to do, so I decided that I was going to go back and like try and replay Super Mario Galaxy.
Oh, sure.
Which I have on the Switch. And I like it, but I feel like it's hard to like. I feel like the way the levels work on the small screen on the handheld Switch, it felt weird to me trying to like. It felt like a game that I need to play on a screen.
Right.
So I'm gonna have to go back and do that at some point where I'm having it docked.
Yeah.
But, Apollo Justice continues to be excellent.
Nice. Hell yeah. Okay.
But yeah, are we doing the coming soon thing on a regular basis, or is that just the
when there's things to? Yeah. Okay. Which I guess we did in the beginning now. For
That's
this
true.
one.
That's true.
As a little bit of the warm up.
That's true.
But yeah, that'll probably be the game I'm playing next week. Is going to be, well, maybe not FF7 right away. I might actually hold off on that because Pacific Drive is going to be coming out in 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
And I do want to play that.
And Nightingale's coming out. Is that out this week?
It should be out this week as well. I don't know exactly when this week. Maybe Friday?
Yeah. No, who has time for all these games?
Not me.
Still playing games from 6 years ago.
Theoretically, it said it released on the 20th, but I haven't. It hasn't shown up on my list yet.
That is the day we are recording.
It is.
For those.
Wow. Just giving away all our secrets, huh?
Yeah. Dang. A lot of games.
A lot of games. Yep. Yes. As of right now, it says it will unlock in approximately an hour. So maybe I'll check that out tonight. We'll see.
There you go.
I don't know what its price point's going to be set at.
Probably $30-$40, I'd assume.
I hope they're not trying to already be just pay us, give us 70 now.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, it is early access.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, I guess that's it. I feel like I had something else I was going to say. I can't remember what it was.
Something about Scott?
No. No, I rarely. I don't really talk to Scott.
No, I know. He's mentioned it. He doesn't know if you're mad at him or if he did something, but yeah. You should probably reach out soon.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Look, I'm going to stay out of it. That's between you two.
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you later. Oh, no, shit.
You can talk to me later, but if others want to talk to us later, where can they reach out to us?
Yeah. Please email us at thesavestatepodcast@gmail.com or send us a message at SaveStatePod on most social media stuff.
Soon to be pretty much exclusively Blue Sky.
Apparently,
possibly
that's what we're
by
doing.
the time you've heard this,
all
the
the
switch
cool
over
kids.
will happen. Yep.
Like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah.
Give us 5-star ratings.
Sure.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
That's nice. Do those things.
That is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got your instructions. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah.
And
Bye-bye.
bye.